Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of AWS Partners Unplugged. My name is Sri Raghavan, and I'm your host today. AWS Partners Unplugged is a podcast series where we discuss all things related to our ISV and SI partners. Today, we are delighted to welcome our AWS COE partner, Center of Excellence partner, Workato, and one of my favorite speakers, a dynamic speaker, Mr. Chandar Pattabhiram. Chander is, I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more, but he's the Chief Go-to-Market Officer of Workato. And Workato, as you know, is a leading integration platform as a service iPaaS solutions provider in the market today. Chander, a very warm welcome to you, and I've been looking forward to doing this with you for quite some time. So I'm happy I'm here with you.
Thank you, Sri. Much appreciate the very kind introduction. You were way too kind. But it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I've been looking forward to it for a long time too. And as Amazon, as you said, we're a great partner of Amazon, AWS. I look forward to talking about the synergies as we explore today.
Hey, Chander, you're the head of GTM, the Chief Go-to-Market Officer at Workato. To me, this seems to be a more all-encompassing role than a CMO, which, by the way, is very important to begin with. What is your day-to-day focus, and how do you balance the strategic aspects of this role as a part of the executive suite that you're in?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've come from the last 10 years in public companies, Workato and Coupa. I was the Chief Marketing Officer at Workato, Chief Marketing Officer at Coupa. And as I kind of looked at the next role, one of the things I thought that I could bring the most value to the organization is how do you bring synergies across different aspects of go-to-market to ultimately do these 5 words: set up sales to win. Ultimately, everything in go-to-market, we all have jobs only because if ultimately for sales to win bigger, sales to win faster, and sales to win more. And so the purview of the responsibility is how do you bring synergies across different aspects of go-to-market, writing from go-to-market strategy to all aspects of marketing, from growth marketing, product marketing, and corporate marketing, all our relationships, partnerships, alliances, and channels, both ISVs as well as SIs and GSIs, as well as the revenue operations, as well as elements of corporate strategy. How do you bring all these things together? And also incubation sales. Sales is operating, enterprise sales is operating, field sales is operating in the performance zone. And using the Jeffrey Moore parlance, the incubation zone where you're trying to ensure this rinse and repeatability before you get it into the sales organization, and bring synergy and harmony across all these aspects of the organization to ultimately set up sales to win. And that's the purview of the role. So when I wake up in the morning, the simple question I'm asking is, are we aligning all these aspects? And everything that we're doing is setting up our field organization to be really successful in the short term as well as in the long term.
That makes a lot of sense, Chandra. One of my very early managers, what seems like about 900 years ago in my career, at the end of the day, regardless of what your role is, we all work in sales. If we do not do the right thing in terms of putting the right products out in the market for our customers, then what's the point? It really doesn't matter. So I fully agree with you, and yours is a very exciting as well as an important job. Now, in the context of the work you've done, no surprise here, but Workato has done some great work with AWS, particularly with AWS Marketplace in delivering what even Gartner has acknowledged as most innovative full iPaaS solutions. We're obviously very thrilled with this collaboration. And the funny thing is that we've barely scratched the surface. We're just getting started. Tell us a little bit more about what types of problems you're solving with the solution that you're bringing to market, and what your outlook is for those products as you resolve issues for your customers.
That's a great question, Sri. Let me start with the genesis of the company. The founders of Workato were the founders of TIPCO, the original very successful integration company. So there's a lot of background and DNA in integration. The real aha is how do you take a sophisticated, complex problem of integration and how do you make it as consumable, as democratized as possible, that people across the organization can actually leverage and be successful with it, and help IT democratize this across the line of business. So the real problem we're trying to solve is to create, orchestrate data processes, applications across the business, right? And do it in a single place rather than, there's multiple different tools historically to solve it. There's people solving it at data level. people solving it at an API level, people solving it at an app level, people solving it at a process level, etc. The real power of Workato is the power of one, is bringing all these different ideologies into a single place that we have called the Workato One platform. How do companies use it? Let me just quickly sharpshoot examples. So since you're an integration and orchestration provider, you can be used across the business, front office, back office, etc. So today, for example, Atlassian is using Workato to, bring orchestrate and integrate applications across their finance systems, the ERP and 30 plus finance systems, to help close their books up to 50% faster. Companies like Snowflake in the front office, the data cloud company is using kind of what they call Workato as the data activation platform to market to thousands and thousands of account-based marketing prospects in their system. Companies such as Aon, big financial services company, using Workato as the integration backbone, or the iPaaS as you called it, backbone, to really drive harmony across front office, back office, hundreds of applications across their business. Companies in Europe, one of Europe's largest retailers, they have organized their queue onboarding process in such a way they have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of APIs. And how do you orchestrate these different APIs and processes across to accelerate this queue onboarding process? Companies in APAC, the company called David Jones, which is the Nordstroms of APAC. And how do they make sure that products get to people by Christmas time the right way, using Workato as kind of the backbone? So the simple thing is going to be used across the front office and the back office. The real value of why Workato in these cases is that it really eliminates the integration bottleneck relative to some of the traditional tools and increases the responsiveness of the IT organization. That's the positive.
I think that's the punchline, Chander, in the sense that if Workato were not present, what you're suggesting to me and what you're saying actually is that you're going to have a lot of disjoint applications which hardly talk to each other, and which means you will not have a cohesive workflow across these organizations to be able to do things like delivering the right kinds of products at the right time, during the right seasons for the customers, or not being able to identify fraud at the right time because of the fact that there's so much of an application sprawl, or because of the numbers of APIs and so on. So Workato, in some sense, for lack of a better word, is a glue which pulls together all these different applications and brings a method to the madness.
It does, Sri. And just to piggyback on that, I like the way you framed it. It's the glue that brings us together. And just to give you the scale with Amazon, right? We run on AWS.
Yeah.
And we have processed about 2,500 plus direct customers, 25,000 plus direct and indirect customers. And just to understand the scale on AWS, we processed about 750 billion tasks and 250 billion tasks in the last 1 year alone on AWS. So when I just do this, when I snap my finger, somewhere in the world, 30,000 tasks just got processed on Workato, right there as I snap my finger every 10 seconds, right? And that is a testimony to not only just the platform scale, but the partnership and what infinite scale that AWS provides us from that perspective. And you talk about AWS Marketplace, that's the other piece. It runs on AWS, and then hundreds of customers have purchased Workato and consumed Workato through the AWS Marketplace. So it's a great synergistic value for us with AWS around the world.
Terrific. Now, you've talked about orchestration and being the glue and bringing the different apps together and bringing the thousands of different APIs together and so on. In the context of this, I think we need to bring in the whole construct and concept of agentic capabilities, which Workato has worked extensively with the Amazon Bedrock team on delivering as part of your solution. And tell us a little bit about your perspective and how agents can help drive real enterprise value. And if there are any specific industry use cases that you're aiming to address, some of the challenges that you're seeing today, particularly in the context of implementing agentic workflows.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I talked about the history, the genesis of the company for the first 10 years. But what is really exciting for us as we look at the windshield, as much as I talked about the rearview mirror, is this capability of the agentic capability in Workato in addition to the orchestration capability. But before I get to that, let's just talk about the world of the state of union on agentic today, right? We know that every company is launching agentic. It's raining agents everywhere. But the reality, if you really take a process check on the reality here, is that a lot of these agents are for simpler, discrete tasks at the edge, And agents are not at the core of the business. And what I mean by that is at the edge, meaning like I'm a marketing person using, Gen AI and using AI to drive some better content or better coding and engineering, etc., as opposed to agents doing mission critical tasks at the core of the business. We talked about order to cash or financial on closing or purchase to pay or any of these mission critical processes. That's not there yet. And so that's the opportunity for us as we look at like how do you get agents from the edge to the core. And to do that, I think there is a fundamental reimagination of what the stack needs to be in terms of how do you solve it. So there is an element, first of all, of the models. And we're very proud to partner with Bedrock. We also announced a partnership with Anthropic. And Bedrock is a great opportunity for us to get the ultimate choice in terms of the models that our customers can use in terms of driving these agents to be successful. But in combination with that, what is needed is the ability to get complete enterprise context. Context and skills are the most important things for these models to ultimately to serve these agents to be successful. And that is what the challenge is today in many organizations, because you can get some partial context with some tools, etc., or RAG, but having a platform like Workato gives you the ability to get complete context because we connect to where the sun doesn't shine. And context is just not context in terms of historical data, but how do you look at real-time process across every system that's out there to make these models as successful as possible and as intelligent as possible. And so that's really the opportunity here to get this full context and skills with Workato as a platform. And then secondly, on top of that, having a way to build these agents in a scalable and trusted way, that's the second opportunity. So one challenge is around context and skills. The second challenge is on governance and trust. And a lot of these agents today are agents at the edge and experimental agents, not really actionable production agents, because the governance and trust models in organizations is nowhere near what it needs to be. So if you look at a lot of these companies, they're all experimenting with AI. So getting a governance and trust models that also enables you to have the right policies, the right authentication, the right authorization, that's all part of the same framework, is the key to go drive this at success and do this at scale across.
I fully agree, Chander. I mean, governance from the standpoint, the way you have defined governance makes a lot of sense in terms of security, privileges and whatnot. But we also look at governance from the standpoint of data fidelity. You cannot really have agents talking to each other if you do not have the right kinds of data to feed to the agents to begin with. I mean, part of the whole context is also about applications, it's also about data, making sure the right kinds of data is in the right place for agents to talk to each other and so on. So this is something which I've seen in action. In fact, one of the things, if I remember seeing, Workato had developed a checklist to talk to us about what are some of the best practices have been gathered in your work with customers. Could you talk a little bit about this particular checklist that you've developed, why that could be important from the standpoint of how agents can be deployed?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's a joint initiative that AWS and Workato, because that's what makes it actionable. And so this checklist, which we will provide as part of the podcast, is how do you look at this holistically at this agent framework? We talked about going from skills to the models to ultimately building the agents and getting this trust and governance, right? And are we attacking this at every layer? If I'm a CIO or a person, an IT organization responsible for creating the agentic stack, am I holistically looking at this across the board, rather than just looking at this like, hey, I'm going to build these agents and I need some quick way for me to go build these agents. So at the bottom part of this is the visual context that we provided is, do I have the ability to get comprehensive connectivity across my applications and the ability to understand the context and skills that I talked about, not only at a data level, but at a process level. And that's key. And so that's kind of making sure that you have that. Then if you kind of go up the stack, it's the model choice. It's all about choice and not be captive in terms of one model and having an ability to have the right choice of models. And, I said Bedrock is a great partner for that, to get the right choice of models from that perspective. And then the ability to have a platform as part of the same thing, something that you can get some pre-configured agents, like, at Workato, for example, there's agents for IT, agents for finance, agents for sales, etc. But then ability to configure these agents and do it in a building environment that is rapid and that is no code, not low code, but no code from that perspective. And then the governance and trust I talked about, and you mentioned this, right? It's important to get a governance model in such a way that the agent, the simple way to think about this, the role-based access control, is that the agent cannot do what a human cannot do. For example, if you have a customer success support agent, can the agent access data that the human being cannot? The answer is no. So you have to have these simple models, especially at scale, to do that. The scalable global infrastructure that makes you do it at scale, and we talked about AWS as a part. Having all these abilities and having all these as part of a single foundational platform can give you a big advantage in terms of being responsive, in terms of being agile, and at the same time not compromising on the governance aspects needed. So that's really the checklist. It can be something actionable as you go forward.
I think it bears repeating this checklist, Chander. So I'm going to just give a quick recap because this is some important work that Workato has done with AWS. Number one, comprehensive connectivity has to be there. You have to be able to provide the right kinds of orchestration in terms of the context as well as the enterprise skills. Model choice, which of course, AWS has been a big progenitor of. As you can tell, we not only have our own models, Nova, Titan, but we also have work done with Anthropic, with Hugging Face, and a whole bunch of others. So we provide choice, as you know. Configuration of the agents, both in terms of providing the right configuration so that agents can do the kinds of specific work. You mentioned agents with regard to finance, agent with regard to potentially risk management, whatever the different underlying use cases are. That's very important. The enterprise-wide trust and governance, something which we strongly believe in. You and I have talked about it many, many different times. And of course, the ability to provide all of these things against the backdrop of an infrastructure that can scale and scale very well, depending on the loads that are put on the enterprise infrastructure, is very important. So these 6 things, I think, are extremely important. And thanks for bringing this up. And I'm sure these things are going to keep coming back over and over again. We have a little bit of time. I'd like to focus on one specific thing which you've been a pioneer of, Chander, across your career. And I'd like to pick your brain and learn from you. You work with a lot of partners in your role. And this is not the first time you've worked with partners. In your previous roles too, you've done a lot of work with partners. Now, in the course of your work, you've clearly established many different templates for success. Every enterprise, every industry is different. Talk to us about some of your work with AWS that you've institutionalized at Workato, and why is this a recipe for success? Clearly, we've seen the success, but I'd like the audience to understand how you've been able to deliver the success and what you look at as success when it comes to partners.
Yeah, I think, it's a great question. First of all, we're very proud and excited to be the partner of AWS across all stages of the customer journey, right? So for us, the first thing is, if you look at all stages of the customer journey, it starts with, acquisition, awareness, acquisition, advocacy. And you look at kind of the whole flywheel of how you're creating a customer journey from that perspective, right? And you look at a partner. A partner is somebody who's engaged in every step of it, just not, partial. It's a sum total of every touch. A partnership is a sum total of every touch, not discrete touches, right? And so if you look at the partnership with AWS, first of all, we're very clear that, we want to go empower CIOs to drive success into this transformative agentic economy that we're talking about, right? So how are we doing that? We're partnering with AWS to create joint thought leadership, nothing to do with selling Workato or selling AWS or anything like that, but what is the amount of engagement and knowledge and practical perspectives that IT executives need today to bring these agents to life and drive that thought leadership together as being one activity on one piece. Second is when it comes to acquisition, we've talked about, the Workato value proposition and the AWS scale that it provides. At the same time, how does it make it easy for these customers, for these large companies that I've talked about to consume Workato and to start going fast rather than being bottlenecked? The AWS marketplace is a great place from that perspective. Consumption, hundreds and hundreds of customers today have consumed Workato through the AWS marketplace and go drive that from that perspective. And the third aspect of that is we talked about just in the agentic framework is that how do you make it, again, it's about choice, not captivity. And how do you make it easy for these CIOs to say that I have a variety of options when it comes to models and agentic foundations and all these pieces. This partnerships with Workato One, our new platform on AWS, gives them ultimate choice. It's platform of choice and not captivity for them to embark on this agentic journey. And then finally, on the advocacy piece, to kind of bring this flywheel back, is how do you partner together to showcase the transformative stories of success across our joint customers? And I'll talk about one of those in the near future. But that is the true essence of partnership being aligned across the way, and that's what makes it really successful from our perspective, right?
What strikes me as a common theme in your arc of success, Chander, is that there are two things that are obvious. One is you go where the customers are. It's to you, success is an outcome of the fact that you're maniacally focused on customer value, customer realization, and so on. But the other thing you're doing, based on all that I've seen you do and from what you're telling me, is that it is also about being able to tell the customer where you think that they would be successful in the future. So it's just not about where they are today. It's also about making sure that this continual success is something which is registered based on all the work that you've done. And congratulations so far for all that you've done. My last substantive question here is around the big bets that you and your team are focused on, not just for this year, but if you were to have your rose-colored glasses, what are the big bets, or what is a big bet that you focused on for the next couple of years?
I think it is providing a single place, we call this Workato One, to ultimately drive agentic success for these organizations. And agentic success cannot be sporadic. It has to be synergistic across in a single way. And all these checklists I talked about, the really big bet for us is that can we provide a single foundational platform that scales for companies to get on these agentic journeys with getting the complete context and skills, with the agent foundation that can let them create these agents, and at the same time with the governance and trust that makes them do this at scale with the partnership with AWS. And double down on that in such a way that the onlyness that we have, every organization has onlyness, right? Everybody has different, their unique differentiation. Our onlyness is that we can combine an agentic foundation and trust framework with the world's best way of getting enterprise context and skills to these models, because we connect to places where the sun doesn't shine today. And so doubling down on that onlyness and creating this framework and what we call Workato One is something that we're going to be maniacally focused on across all aspects of the agentic journeys that companies have. So just to give you two examples of this, right? Just on guiding customers to this vision with AWS, right? We have a joint customer today that have leveraged Workato One, this foundation that I talked about, this platform, with AWS. And they are a public company in the security space. So they're a little sensitive about kind of sharing, this specific name on this, but it's a large public company that, almost everybody in the technology space, and a lot of other people know about too. And they are leveraging this agentic foundation today with AWS and Workato, and with Bedrock also in such a way that they can, for their salespeople to create quotes, CPQ quotes. It used to take them, for every average salesperson, about 30 to 40 minutes to create quotes. Now it's less than 1 minute with this agent, because the agent is actually doing a lot of the work for them. So it's human in the loop, but the agent is doing a lot of the work. But this agentic foundation with us and you, with Workato and AWS, has really helped them kind of accelerate this process. Same thing with another organization, US. This one I can name is US Electrical Services, and they provide all different kind of equipment to contractors and electrical contractors and power distribution, all these things. A lot of the technical experts, they have to make sure that the technical experts are retiring, etc. How do you scale these technical experts to get the best version of themselves? They're using this agentic foundation to have these agents, augment these technical experts to provide technical advice. So kind of going from transactional selling to trusted partner selling is something that are using this agentic framework again from that perspective, right?
And we're looking forward to publicizing these case studies when the right time comes, because these are very, very important examples that you provide. We're at the end of our podcast, but before we leave each other, I always like to end my podcast with a humanizing note. Let's assume that you're stranded in a desert island, Chander. What would a book and or a piece of music that you would take with you to sustain yourself as you're alone in this desert island?
And is this a book I have read before or I need to read?
It doesn't matter. It's a recommendation you're providing to us, whether you've read it or not, whether you've heard the music or not.
First of all, let's start with music, right? It's probably, I think, I'm a big fan of classic rock. And I'm a big fan of some parts of Bollywood music. So I would take some Eagles, some Pink Floyd, and some Eric Clapton and just jam with it.
Fantastic. Great choices.
Great, and maybe throw in some Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple right there, right? And so I would be like jamming with that. And also, growing up in South India, my early formative years, I'm a big fan of, there's a South Indian music person called Raja. I'm a huge fan of his music. So I would probably, bring that songs along too, along with all the classic rock.
You and I grew up in the same place, Chander, and Raja is one of my favorites as well. And I can sing, but I'm sure nobody wants to listen to me. In the spirit of give and take, I just got back from Italy, where I went to Pompeii. As a part of that trip through the ruins, I discovered that Pink Floyd did a live
in Pompeii,
and it's being released in IMAX, and I want to watch it. I finally got the CD yesterday via Amazon, and I've been playing it nonstop in my car this morning. My daughter was not thrilled, but hey, David Gilmour, Roger Waters, Sid Barrett, and all the rest of the guys.
Ding, ding, man. So especially next time I know you're in the Bay Area. Like next time we should go together. There's somebody I know, her husband has a tribute to Pink Floyd band. He's actually CEO of the company, and it's a tribute to Pink Floyd band.
We have to go.
Pink Floyd. And so we went and watched it. It's actually very tight music, man. So next time we're there, we should go hit it.
Absolutely, we should do it. Yeah. Chandar Pattabhiram, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts in this podcast. And fair warning to you, you have no choice. You have to come back. We enjoyed having you. Before we let you go, how can people reach you?
Yeah, I have LinkedIn. Chandar P is my, linkedin.com/in/Chandar P. Happy to kind of share perspectives all the time. Happy to do that. And I'm Chandar, CHANDAR at Workato.com.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Chander. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.